Yeah. Bad guys in the building. I told you I'm the life for the party. Why your guys want they try to let that be? Beating head don't gun, make me want to hack. So give me them side, Jolo Maggie. Mommy see I know be legal spender. I got a shitload of that legal tender. I'm thinking how we met is not coincidental. I can make a life just a little better. Have you ever been to Lagos? Have you been with a guy from my city? Hakuna Matata. I like your matako, my titi. Le pédou est magique. Et fille, les chevaux danser. Tu es magnifique, mais là qui style élégant, enchanté. Mademoiselle, c'est le moment de faire la fête. C'est le moment de faire la fête. We are all your neighbor.
Hello, and welcome to the Melee Stats Podcast, Deep Dives. We are here again for, I believe this is the 18th episode. I talked about last week about how I went back to remembering the episode numbers after a few weeks of forgetting what episode number we were on. And I'm right back to forgetting what episode number we're on. But I'm pretty sure it's 18. So last week we had our fun MPGR episode. We got a lot of eyes on us for that. I know we had a couple top players who ended up listening. And now, back on our bullshit. We're doing weird, convoluted episodes about stuff that, hey, you know what? Maybe hundreds of people don't care about. But this is kind of like the Bill Murray situation. He did Ghostbusters, so the studio could greenlight this weird drama movie that he wanted to do. And maybe I'm the Bill Murray in this situation, where I get to do this big MPGR episode, so I can come next week and do an episode that I want to do. Today we're talking about the UK Melee Major Fête, and I'm talking with, you know what? I actually never asked how your name was pronounced. I would say Teroz.
Just Teros works.
Teroz, okay. He is you are on the TO team for Phoenix Blue, correct?
Yes, I'm actually the head TO
The
of
head
Phoenix
TO.
Blue.
I was going to say head TO, but I didn't want to say head TO, and then it turns out you're second in command or something. But yeah, he's the head TO of Phoenix Blue. He's also behind the Phoenix Blue rankings, which we'll get into a little bit today. And, you might know him, the casual fans, you might know him as the name that shows up at the end of a Save Us Untitled video, because he supports the Save Us Untitled Patreon. And if you want to support a different Patreon, of course, you can help us over at MeleeStats.com. No, it's wrong. Patreon.com/MeleeStats. Now, I'm sorry that I had to get that plug in there before I let you speak. But, we're kind of, we turned into super capitalists ever since we've hit our latest Patreon goal. So I apologize about that.
No worries, man. You gotta do what you gotta do.
But how are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely great.
Awesome.
I've just been sleeping most of the day. I've been working at a convention for the past 6 days. Now it's my first day back home.
Oh, great. Yeah, definitely. You need the sleep. And then are you attending Fate?
I am. I'm actually flying out Thursday.
Jeez. Yeah,
which,
so get your sleep before you go to Fate, because I think that's going to be a bit of a party.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to talk about Fate. This is probably one of the tournaments that I think the casual fans, I would say, like the North American fans, this is probably one of the things that they're looking forward to most from the European scene. With Air being something that kind of really established itself for the past few years, Fate coming in and kind of stepping the same footsteps is something that I think a lot of people who are maybe not would be paying attention to the UK scene or the European scene. I think they're going to be looking forward to this. So I really want to talk about this, but I just want to do briefly a quick segment on the MPGR. Since we last talked, 2 more days of the MPGR has been released, so we can talk about the 31 to 40 that was released, and we can also talk about the 21 to 30. So I know you had a ballot as well, in addition to me. So I don't know. Do you want to start off with your thoughts? We can go off to the we can go on with the 31 to 40. Any big thoughts or any people who are specifically stand out to you in that section?
Let me see. So I feel like a lot of the 31 to 40 is about the same, not necessarily order wise, but
Yeah, I think
who's
with
on there.
yeah, exactly. I think this year it's hard to really make like a big case to say no, like Stango should be above Spud, right? Like, I
Yeah,
feel like
definitely.
that whole area is so nebulous this year.
Mm. So the I think the only players that I actually had outside of my top 40 that made it on
Yeah,
were, let's see, I had both Cole and Fat Goku just outside of top 40 for me.
yeah,
And I
interesting.
feel like it's so difficult to actually,
I think
decide on which players
it's
are above which, especially around this range, because a lot of these players, they don't have too many tournaments.
yeah.
I believe Cobol didn't have a lot to go off.
No, I think he had Fight Pit, couple like a couple small tournaments in the South, and then CEO. So yeah, like how much can you really
Mm,
figure out from that?
yeah, and Fakoku, I I felt that his performances were a lot better than I thought they would be. Um, though I hesitated a bit to put him in the top 40,
Yeah,
but maybe I just underestimated him
I think I had
compared
him.
to.
Yeah, I had him in my top 40. I think
Mm,
Bakoku seemed really solid this year. I think it actually touches on something where I think that speaks on like everyone in this range this year is what their maybe expected outcome for their
mm,
ranking is way different than what it actually is. So like if you were to talk to someone who they're looking forward to the rank, but they're not like crazy in depth on the melee so, like viewership where they're making their own top 50, right? If you have just someone who's looking forward
mm.
to it and knows all the players but is not actually ranking them themselves, I feel like you could list any of these names out and people would say like Stango, why is he 35 or Santi's 32? Like I actually
Mm.
because I am involved with the MPGR in a sense, I actually trek. I make the trek into the depths of Reddit to see what people are saying. Something that I don't do for anything else. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who obviously are informed about melee, who know
Mm.
all these players, but without paying close enough attention, without making your own list, yeah, some of these look really off. But
Yeah, definitely. Um, One player who definitely sticks out is Bimbo,
yeah,
who got 39th.
yeah. Why do you? So what specifically do you think stands out about him?
Well, I think what stands out about him is that I think he's by far the least known player,
Yeah,
maybe even in the entire top 50.
for
I'd
sure.
say to the general audience, especially since he's never even been ranked on a top 100.
Yeah, this is his
Uh,
debut.
and I knew, so going into the ballot, I he was also one of those players who performed better than my anticipation, I think.
Mhm.
So when I was mapping, I just mapped everything out, just going, not looking at results, just what I thought in my head. I had him in the contention for top 50, but
Yeah,
after looking at the results, I realized that damn, he's just had an insane first half of the
exactly.
year.
Yeah, I thought the same exact thing. I remember I actually was not at this point in my ballot. I was at like the top 20 or 30 or so when I was watching Save Was Entitled stream and I saw he had Bimbo at 33rd and I was like, that's crazy. You're nuts. And then I looked at mine. I mean, I can pull up my ballot right now, but it'll take a little bit. I probably had Bimbo. Yeah, probably somewhere around like 38 or so. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think just looking at him without knowing his results or without even just like you can even know his results, but without looking at the all the data right in front of you, I think yeah, it's tough to say that he would have been top 50. But
Mm.
he's got that SFAT win, he's got a Ginger win, he's got a Bananas win. If yeah, even if we're gonna look at like National Arcadian and like losses to Azza or something, I think that yeah, he's still definitely a strong player. it'll be interesting to see how he's able to continue this because we saw his wins all come like relatively early into the year. Genesis saving Mr. Lombardi, and yeah, I think I think all those wins I just mentioned were both from there.
Mm.
And yeah, then we saw him kind of do a little not too well at the National Arcadian, and then this past weekend at Smash Factor, he lost to oh my god, who did he lose to in pools? Was it Rael? But then he ended up losing to Lucky in bracket, and then ended up losing in losers bracket before top eight as well. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he's able to take his hot start of the year and continue it along. Anyone else who's in this range who you might seem as interesting, or do you just want to get on to the 21 to 30?
Well, what I think is worth mentioning is that there are a few players here who are, who fall into the category of very few results, so
Yeah,
very, very difficult to rank. I'd
yeah.
say Rishi and Santi definitely fall into that category for me.
I would throw Stango and Spud in as well. I like
Oh yeah.
Stango. I
Oh
think
yeah,
has
for
been to
sure.
2 tournaments.
I think this range was honestly one of the most difficult to rank for me. The having Rishi, Spud, Bimbo, La Luna,
Yeah.
Stango, all
Now,
of them. Just
yeah. Go on. Sorry.
I feel like they could be shuffled around and it wouldn't be too weird.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think like an official ranking with these players can go up and down like one or two, and I
Mm.
don't really think anyone would bat an eye. Um, I will say from experience, I've done a ballots for the past couple um MPGRs, and I did it for when it was SSBM rank for a little bit. I don't know how many times you've done it. If this is your first ballot, I know that sometimes the European candidates are a little. I think they were a little harder to get to. I think this year we have a pretty solid number of European people who have ballots. Is this your first time doing a list?
Yes, it is my first time doing a ballot.
Oh man,
I've actually wanted to do one for so long,
yeah,
but I feel like I've well, I haven't even been part of the scene for that long,
yeah.
so
When
I
did you
never
join the
felt
scene?
like I joined the scene like early 2018.
Oh no way,
Yeah,
that's nuts.
I I went to my first local like maybe late 2017.
Yeah,
But early
that's
2018, I started going to a lot of tournaments and I quickly joined the Phoenix Blue team and well,
wow. Yeah,
a lot of stuff just happened in like that half year.
that is crazy. Usually when people say that they haven't been in the scene for long, I expect them to say like 2015. Like something that's been around for a while still. Um, yeah, that's crazy. Well, I'm so glad that this is that you're able to do this ranking because I don't know a ton about your like outside of Phoenix Blue. I don't know a ton about how you view melee, but
Mhm.
obviously I'm happy to have any European people on the ballots. I think that having representation for like a group of melee players who sometimes don't get the best representation is always great. But yeah, like I think they did you dirty. This was the hardest one to do.
Well,
This
I
is like
feel
my
like
fourth.
even
Yeah,
though, yeah, it was super difficult. I feel like because I've done quite a lot of ballots, just for fun,
yeah,
following along, um, and I definitely feel like this was insanely much harder. But I'm actually quite happy with, looking at when I'm looking at my ballot and comparing it to the final ranking. I feel very content with a lot of the decisions I made.
yeah. I will say that's one of the things that really surprised me about this was in melee stats we were kind of going nuts. We were like pulling our hair out about this ranking, and we were like hemming and hawing about whether or not we actually wanted to be a part of it. like
Mm.
um, obviously most of melee stats who had ballots in the past continue to do ballots. I think only maybe one person, maybe one or two people said that they just really didn't feel comfortable enough to do one. uh, but yeah, the people who accepted, I think there was a tiny bit of regret just because of how hard it was. But we did our all of our ballots, we did separate, we didn't talk to each other during the ballot process. We gave our each other our ballots so we could kind of like check each other to make sure that it's not like I have chewed at 50 or something like that, right? Yeah, just to make sure that we're not going crazy. And all of our ballots are extremely similar. So that was one of the most surprising
Mm.
things is that even in this year,
Yeah.
like our ballots are similar. Our combined ballot that we talked about last week that we released to the patrons, our combined ballot is actually ends up being relatively similar to what's been
Mm.
released so far on the MPGR. Yeah, it's wild how even with the sparsity of data that we have this year, how I really do agree with the list so far.
Yeah, I just like to quickly touch on the Phoenix Blue rankings because
Yeah,
it was a very similar situation. We've had I actually put out a form to all the panelists after the ballot process was done, and a large majority felt that it was difficult to rank
yeah,
the full top 50, and a lot of people actually not a lot, a few people dropped out because they just felt that they couldn't put together a good ballot. Um, and it seems that the general consensus was that especially the lower parts, the 30 to 50, was extremely difficult. But actually looking at the ballots, it is extremely similar. Not very many people had like wild differences
yeah.
compared to what it actually happened. So I think even though it might feel really difficult, I think if you actually look at the stats, look at the data, you will most of the time come to the same conclusion as as the other people.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think you're right about that. And like you said, it was surprising to see. Um, I think you get into sort of ranges where it's a little closer to what the general consensus is. And I think
Mm.
that that brings us to the list that was released yesterday, the 21 to 30. I think this is, we're getting to the point where it's a lot closer to what the general melee consensus might be. I think
Yeah.
the standard deviation for all this is probably a lot smaller than everything else.
Mm.
So yeah, did you see what was released yesterday? Do you want to get into
Yeah.
this, the 21 through 30?
Yeah. I had a big grin on my face because I'm really happy about how close I am to the 21 to
Oh,
30
nice.
range. Um, I realize now that I have my top 20 is the same as the actual top 20.
Really? Oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
I had bananas off of my top 20, and I had
Dude.
KGH at
Oh,
20.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I had Gatsu and bananas like super close, but I just put bananas at 20.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
But so,
I
but
don't know
well,
about
there's one
bananas.
person that I felt like didn't belong here in my mind, and
Yeah.
that person is Shroomed.
Interesting. Okay.
I actually put Shroomed a bit lower than 30.
Yeah.
I
Where
mean,
did you have Shroom? Because I think I put him. Yeah, I put him at like 35 or something.
I had him at 36.
Okay. Yeah. So we were probably
Um,
really close on that one.
I feel like what I looked at as Shroomed, I think he has some pretty good wins.
Hmm.
I but what really brought him down for me is just looking at his local results, or not local results, but like smaller event results because he doesn't go to locals.
Yeah.
um, but like I think he if I remember correctly, he had quite a bit of just extremely questionable losses.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting that you bring that up. So, without having all the data in front of me, of course, I'm not able to really make the best claims on this. But I
Mm.
think Shroom's bad losses were relatively separate from what I expect of him. His 97th at Genesis, losing to H2 and J Bash. I think that's really bad. And if we're gonna
Yeah,
call him a top 30 player because he is in the top 30, I think that's probably the worst result of a top 30 player. Um,
definitely.
but
I
yeah, yeah,
I,
uh,
I feel like it all comes down to the peaks versus consistency and etc.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That whole argument.
because if I what I did for a lot of the players, I just looked at, okay, what are their best wins and how do their their like how do all of their wins stack up against each other.
Yeah.
And if I only did that, I might have come to the conclusion that Shroom would be a top 30 player.
Yeah,
But I feel like a lot of people, since a lot of players do have bad losses, I feel like um but sorry, I'll try to I think Shroomed Shroom's bad losses are worse than a lot of other players' bad losses in this category,
Yeah.
especially his amount. I'd say there were definitely players that I just did not know of, while compared to a few other players, they had losses that, in my mind, weren't as bad.
You know what? I'd be really interested to hear specifics on that. I don't know if you're able to pull it up like
Uh,
and give me those specific players, but looking at his results, I didn't really get that same exact like I didn't get that same exact feeling. I
mm,
thought that yeah, his Genesis was really bad, but actually I didn't think that that was indicative of if he goes to another major. I don't think that he's going to lose to people like that. I
yeah, no,
know
definitely.
at Smash and Splash he had a DQ in pools that was counted as a loss. I don't know if that was one of the ones that maybe was a
Mm.
head scratcher for people. Um, but yeah, as far as him, obviously for so long he's proven to be such a good player, such a top level player, and now we see that his focus is not really on the game, but
Mm.
he's still able to do well. Wins on Chu and Ginger. Really showed to me that when he wants to turn it on, I think he can.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think skill wise, especially considering his performance at low tier city, I
Yeah,
think he I think he is a top 30 player. I
yeah,
think if he just goes to enough tournaments and actually performs, um, I I think he is top 30 player. And I'd like to note that, I don't think, he is hard bottom of the 31 to 40, since the 32 to 36, or around that part of the ranking, is just so close. I could have easily had Shroomed at 32nd on my ranking, so I don't think, um I don't want to seem as like if I come off as having him, a lot lower than what he
no,
ended up
sorry,
being.
the fans have already dubbed you the Shroom Tater.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're
Just
tweeting at
go
him,
go ahead. Yeah, sure, go ahead. No, but
boycotting Phoenix
um,
Blue.
no, but I feel like that stood out to me, but I don't think it's wild in any way. I mean, having him at 30th, since he has good wins.
He has good wins. Yeah, I mean, we listed that. He's got wins unlucky as well. And I think there are voters who probably tend to be a little more conservative as to um, whether or not how they rate players who've been around for a while, right?
Mm,
Like, I think it's tough for some people to look at someone like Fat Goku and Shroomed. So like I actually had Shroomed and Fat Goku back to back on my ballot. I let me see. I had Shroomed at 34 and Fat Goku at 35. And the trajectories for them are completely different, right? Shroomed has been a
yeah.
great player for so long and has now fallen down to that level. And Fat Goku's been around the same range in the top 100 for a little bit and now has jumped up to this level. And I think, yeah, there are probably people who, if they were to look at a player on the come up, and if they were to look at a player who's been great and is now slumping, they probably like mentally give the person who's slumping a little more credit
Oh
because
yeah.
they've been around for a while. So we've probably seen a little bit of that. I
Mm,
think overall, the changes that are made for these top 100 players sometimes can be a little slow to see in the actual top 100 if you're a top player. But yeah, I think Shroom's a good one to pick out. I want to talk about Hacks, actually. I
oh
think
yeah.
Hacks at 25 was a little surprising to some people. And I
Mm.
think the same thing. Like, I thought I was surprised to put him where I put him on my ballot, which was
Where did you?
I had him in the same range. I had him at 25, actually.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
I actually put him at 23rd.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think going into this that I was going to be so impressed by him, but
Mm,
he just has really solid wins. He beats the players who are around his skill level, and he doesn't have a ton of bad losses. His thing when he came back, the box hacks,
mm,
was that like if I saw him versus a Peach or like a Samus or something, any character that might not be um, incredibly, I don't want to say easy, but just maybe they're not great combo weight, or maybe they're able to punish really hard some issues that might arise from the box. Yeah, I remember if I saw him versus a Peach, I got really scared. Like he lost to Ryobi to maybe at
mm,
locals when he came back. So yeah, I always kind of feel like I was counting Hacks out for a little bit when he first came back, but yeah, now I really do think that he's top 25 material. I think this is such a great thing for him to be on the rise still. Right now, I think if I were to seed a tournament that he was at, I'd put him top 20, like as a top 20 player.
Yeah, I mean, he had that run. Was it Paradigm Shift
Yeah, where he
where
beat Ginger and Captain Face Roll.
yeah, because I was quite surprised. Going into that tournament, I thought that Hax would perform well, but then seeing him go up against Ginger from losers,
Yeah.
I don't have the exact head-to-head in my head, but I think it was like 3-0 for Ginger or something around
Oh,
around like
that's interesting. I don't really know off the top of my head either.
but I I believe that Ginger has had Hax's number for the past few months, but Hax just turned it up, and especially I think he lost to Zamu in winners and then just
Yeah.
made the run. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was insane stuff, and I feel like Hax is also he's just I would easily put him as a top 20 player
Oh, for
going
sure.
forward.
You know what the cool thing about Hacks is he's always Box Hacks has always done well versus Spaceys. So
Mm,
not that I'm trying to discount his wins on Ginger, SFAT, West Balls, the variety of players who he does well against. I'm not trying to discount that at all. I think that's all great. But man, his set, I think it was Gommel, his set versus Hamza, that was like eye opening to me about how Hacks could actually be. Because like that's
mm,
not you don't really see a ton of players do that well against Hamza. So it'll be interesting to see that whether or not he's able to like catapult himself into the tier players that he used to be in. He used to be a top 10 player. And
yeah.
I think it sounds crazy. I wouldn't have said this a year ago. Like I wouldn't have said this while he DQ'd out of every single thing he entered. But yeah, right now I could say at the end of the year, if Hax is top 10, I would be shocked, but I'm not really all that taken aback. Like I think that is possible.
Yeah.
Maybe next year is probably more likely, but we'll see. Um, So yeah, I think that's basically it. We can talk about meds or West balls. I think that all these
Mm.
players, it's just all in the same range. Like Lucky's a little higher than I would have him, but it's the same thing we talked about before. It's all relatively the same range.
I think it's a few interesting, especially the 27 to 29 range are like just interesting players, not necessarily their placements, but just looking at Nunn, who's been a solid top 20 player for a while, having not having any real stellar performances,
Yeah,
dropping off quite a bit, but I feel like you know I think he's better than his ranking, but his performances has put him where he is now. But
yeah.
I expect to see him do much better in the second half of the year
I would
than
say
he has
for
been.
yeah, I would say for none. It's not that he's done poorly because
Yeah.
he really doesn't have bad losses. It's just that every tournament he's gone to, he loses to players who would be considered in his skill range. He loses to like two top 20 players or whatever. And
Mm.
yeah, it's like it's tough to really show off what he has when that's the case. And they're not bad losses, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's just kind of a
I think
lack of good stuff. But yeah, you're right.
exactly.
If he were to go to more stuff, if
Um,
he goes to SmashCon, Shine, etc., yeah, if I see him top 20 again, definitely I'm not surprised by that if that's the case.
I wasn't expecting Chudat to be up there.
Yeah,
I myself had him about there after looking at his results, but going into the ballot, I was not thinking that Chu was a top 30 player, but
yeah. Wow, I actually had
um,
Shu at 28 as like exactly. So that's cool. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. You're right about that. There's so many players who it's just like looking at their results, um, not knowing how they would do, and then they're kind of being like pleasantly surprised to see that you're actually ranking them a little high.
Chuda is just such a
Yeah,
weird player to rank. Cause I mean, one year he's demigod, and then the next year is he top 50? And
yeah.
then
I mean,
now,
he goes from 11th, like 10th in a lot of people's minds. That was the year when S2J made 10th over him. But yeah, he goes from
wasn't he seventh at
he
like a
was
summer
he was
ranking?
7th on the summer ranking. Yeah, so he goes from
Yeah.
7th on the summer ranking, and then he goes to like borderline top 10, basically top 10 in a lot of people's eyes, and
Mm.
then 6 months later he doesn't make top 50. So yeah, that man, yeah, he's just like it's ebb and flow with him. He's either he's on the come up or he's on the way out. And right now, what we're seeing Chu is coming back to form, and then what 6 months from now we'll see him like losing to random people in pools. But yeah, as of right now, I think we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence from him.
Yeah, and then the final player I want to touch upon, as you mentioned, Meds.
Yeah,
Because Meds is so weird to rank because what actually has him up there is his axe wins,
yeah.
and multiple axe wins, I might add.
The axe wins are
Though,
weird. Yeah, it's so
yeah,
like one specifically that I think was I forget if it was counted or if it was taken off. One specifically though was Axe's Ice Climbers.
mm,
And then there are two other sets that they played, which were a variety of Fox Pika, Fox Falco, Marth Pika, Marth Ditto, or not Marth Pika, Mark Falco. So it's really weird. They actually haven't played a ton of straight up Fox Pika sets, so it's hard to evaluate like
mm,
how do I view a win where Meds beats him in a set that Axe went Pika, Falco, and Marth. I still view them as real wins, but yeah, I don't know. Like if they were to meet in winners' quarters of the big house or something, right? Like I don't know what
yeah.
happens.
So another thing is he performed quite well at the Kid that Got the Mango,
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. He made
yeah,
top 8.
yeah. I believe he did.
And now also we saw him at Smash Factor.
Yeah,
He got second, right? I wasn't able to follow along
he did get
with
second.
the
Yeah,
stream.
he had a pretty solid losers run after losing to Bladewise in pool, not in pools earlier in top 8.
Mm,
Yeah, or that was actually pre top 8. That was top 16. Yeah, Mens is definitely someone who. Yeah, I remember Melee Stats member Oven told me he was going to have him top 25, and I was like, "You're crazy." And then you know what? I put him top 25 on my list. I put him at 24. Because yeah, he doesn't have a ton of results, but all the tournaments he went to, for the most part, is solid. Those Axe
mm,
wins, whatever you make of them, still impressive that he's able to beat Axe. Um, he's got a Pew Pew win. He does well versus Fox players. He beat KGH, I know, and then he beat Lucky this weekend, who he lost to a kid that got Mango. Yeah, Meds is going to be interesting because I feel like we've seen a lot of matchups that are really good for him. I know that he likes playing Marths, playing against Marths, and I know that he likes playing against Spaceys. So I'll be interested to see, like, let's say he gets funded to go to Big House or Main Stage. And
mm.
who do we see him against? Do we see him against a Peach? Do we see him against a Sheik or whatever? Like, I'd be interested to see how he does against these matchups that we really haven't seen a ton of. Um, yeah, I want to point out one thing about the rankings that we haven't seen yet. So are you content with going on? Anything else any burning questions you want to talk about for 21 to 30?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think Gatsu was difficult to rank because
Yeah,
he just happened to get a Wizrobe win like right before
yeah, it was
the
weird
tier.
because it's kind of like it's it's like about the perception of that, right? Like I
Mm,
wasn't incredibly surprised when I saw it, but I have to give him props if I consider
yeah,
Wizrobe to be you know just as good as Hungry Bucks, which I do. If I consider that this year, then I have to give him props. Like if I saw him beat Hungry Bucks, I would be way more shocked. But like
yeah,
from a standpoint, like from a ranking standpoint, I think you can't really put a ton of stuff into that. Like you can't say, oh well, you know, Gatsu's good at the Falcon matchup. I don't know if you can really do that for rankings. So yeah, I kind of had to give him props. But yeah, the one person I want to talk about from the rankings we haven't seen yet, we're going to use this as a segue to get into our next topic. But what'd you think about where'd you have Triff?
Triff. Yeah, for me, I think it, for me he's solidly in his own tier in my mind
Yeah,
when looking at because when looking at the top echelon, I feel like I couldn't put him with them, but when looking at the contenders right below him, I couldn't put him with them either.
yeah,
So I feel like for me, he's just solidly 12th.
yeah. I have him 12th as well.
Mm,
Yeah, It's definitely
Though
like you're right about like he feels like he's in his own tier. I actually the Melee Stats players, I talked to them about it. The Melee Stats members talked
mm,
about where they rank their players, and I actually think Edwin put him at top 10. I think he had him at 10th. I think someone else had him 11th. But yeah, I think you're right. Like right now, I don't know if I would consider him better than SFAT,
though I
IBW. Yeah,
yeah, I should mention I had him a lot closer to 11th than 13th.
yeah, yeah. That
Uh,
I think that's right. I think there's a bit of a drop off. I had Moki at 13th, and I think that there's a drop off between not a huge one, but I think that just speaks to how good Triff is. And you know what
yeah.
else might speak to about how good Triff is? I think we're going to see a European ranking someday in the near future that might have him a pretty good spot. He might be pretty close to the top. Uh, and I know that you
Mhm.
are involved with a European ranking that's going to be coming out. So you are the. Would it be wrong to call you the mastermind behind
I
Phoenix Blue
wouldn't think
rankings?
so.
No.
I'm
uh,
the I'm I'm the spearhead,
the spearhead.
the
Okay, that's a good one.
di- director, I guess. Well,
So
I have a lot of hats. I'm the
yeah,
lead. I'm the head statistician, the head editor, the uh yeah, well, just everything kind of.
yeah, yeah. So you're the everything behind the Phoenix Blue rankings. So this is the
Mm,
first time that we're seeing the Phoenix Blue rankings, correct?
yes, th-
So
that is correct.
people probably will remember that there was a European rank that was released a little bit ago. There was the Air rank, which was a top 50 list of European players. So
Mm,
I believe this kind of follows in the footsteps of that, right? So we're going to also see top 50 European players for the Phoenix Blue
yes,
rankings.
yes, that's correct.
Now, what is the methodology? Is like, are there any difference between what we see in the MPGR and what the Phoenix Blue rankings are going to do?
So, going into the ranking creation, the I mean, the main reason this even exists is because the Air rankings were discontinued
Yeah,
since Team Air was disbanded after Air 5. Um, so I I did not want to, do too much crazy stuff since
yeah.
didn't actually have any prior experience working on these types of rankings, except for the Swedish power ranking and my local power rankings. So I just looked at the methodology that the Air rankings used and tried to use most of it to see what works, what doesn't work. Change it up a little bit where I thought was needed. One thing we did was that we just upped the attendance requirement just a little bit,
Yeah,
because I believe the Air ranking didn't actually have an attendance requirement as soon as as long as you had one tournament,
interesting.
which put a lot of kind of inactive players on the ranking.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, what would you
while
say? Were there any players this year who, yeah, obviously, so the Phoenix Blue rankings are not out yet. So
Yeah,
we're not trying to. I'm not trying to, make you leak anything, of course. But would you say there are any players who would have made it on the top 50 if it were like the air rank, if there were no attendance requirements? Who didn't make it onto the Phoenix Blue rankings? Do you think anyone missed out because of those activity requirements?
yes, for sure. A big one is Tech, the French Jigglypuff.
Yeah,
A lot of people would know him for having some crazy runs. I think in back in 2016,
I
when
think it was it DreamHack 2015? Was that what it was?
he had the DreamHack London in 2015, where Westballs attended. If you
I
remember
think
that one, I
I
think that
think
was at
it's
the same.
also yeah
So DreamHack London was at the same time as the HTC
yeah
uh, tournament, and
HTC Throwdown, yeah.
exactly, those two were at the same time. And I remember, so Tech got maybe third or fourth at that tournament, and he was solidly a top 10 player, back then. Also, having a crazy run at, I think, was Air 2,
Yeah.
where he got third, losing only to Lucky and Armada. And but yeah, so Tech he was a lot more inactive following that. He just barely made the air rankings in 13th, I believe. And then this year he only attended air 5.
Yeah.
And the thing is that he also attended Valhalla 2, which would have put him in the, like, he would have actually fulfilled the requirements, but he DQ'd
Oh
first
no.
round of bracket. So we couldn't put him on the ballot
That makes
since
sense. Yeah.
even though he attended the amount of tournaments that was required, he just played pools in one of them and then nothing else, which just
Yeah.
put him that tournament didn't give us any stats for him. So it's a shame, but I really hope he'll be able to attend a little more. I know he's been active at some local tournaments in France, because he's definitely a top 10 player in Europe if he just actually competes.
And he's one of the players. I think he's one of the few players who, like the rest of the scene outside of Europe, probably knows very well.
Yeah, I mean, he
So
was very hyped up when he was going to Genesis.
yeah, did he? He got food poisoning there. Was that it? Was that the one?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's such a shame.
Oh, it was terrible.
What could have been? Yeah. Um, but you mentioned Air 5.
Mm.
So are you doing a full year of eligibility for the ranking period?
We're actually doing, it's kind of a weird one to do, but we're doing from June last year until
Yeah.
June this year,
Okay.
just to have that full year
I think
of
that really helps
tournament.
just having like more data of course just leads to
Mm.
better rankings, I would say. So
Yeah,
this makes sense.
I so I mean I'd say that doing a half year ranking for the European scene is almost impossible, since
Especially
we have
yeah, if you want to do
a
top
lot
50.
yeah, well, even higher. It would just be, a lot, because since a lot of players don't necessarily travel that much outside of the country,
Yeah.
so for a lot of the, I mean, even the top 20 players, it would be, just looking at one single tournament performance between the two players. Feel like that would be, it wouldn't really be a fair way of making a ranking for us. So I think 1 year is absolutely perfect, since it gives us the data we actually need to make these rankings.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And is there a release date that we can share with the people, or is there a release date that's already been shared?
The release date hasn't been shared, but I can go ahead and share it right now.
Yeah,
The
a little
the
exclusive.
exclusive from the Melee Stats Deep Dives.
Melee
So
stats
the
exclusive.
the first, so we will be releasing on 5 different days, 10 on each day, just like the MPGR does it. But we will be doing it 5 days in a row, so Monday through Friday, and that will be next week. So it will start on the 5th of August, and it will be each day that week. There will be 10 new players revealed until on Friday the 9th, when the top 10 is finally revealed.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to see what it is. I will say, so I would like to say that I'm able to keep up with the European scene a ton, and while
Mm.
I do think I know, I'll probably know. You know, I'd be shocked if there were like half the players on the list who I didn't know. I will say that I'm definitely able to know the names, but as far as like where they are in the scene, I think that's
Mm.
really what I'm looking forward to. And we talked about this briefly before, but off mic, we should talk about the differences in what the North American scene, or maybe just the scene outside of Europe, what they would view as the top European players, and then how that might actually change when you just look at
Mm.
these European results. So I think there's definitely players who are going to end up really high on the Phoenix Blue ranking that maybe if you were to just ask someone who pays attention to the big events, probably wouldn't know of, or maybe wouldn't have put that high, and vice versa. There's obviously players who've been top 100 for such a long time, and they might not
Mm.
be as highly ranked in Europe right now as maybe some people think. Are there any players that stand out to you who would fit either of those descriptions?
Well, yeah. So the first player just instantly would be Maxi.
Yeah,
Since Maxi has had some pretty crazy runs in the past. He got second at Valhalla 2 earlier this year. Just beating the European AMSA, beating Frenzy, beating Present. Just have it. That was quite a huge um, breakout performance, since a lot of people knew that he was good
Yeah.
following his performance at Air 5 and the Contract Invitational. But I think the Valhalla 2 was just solidly put him as one of those players who are just in the upper echelon of Europe. And I don't think anyone in the US really know of him outside of the fact that he went to Smash and Splash and didn't necessarily perform as well
Yeah, you're right.
as us Europeans would expect, but he didn't have too good of a seed. But I mean, he's also, Maxi isn't always the most consistent player. He didn't have a too stellar of a run at Regen. I believe he got ninth, losing to Pipsqueak and a lower ranked UK player. But I still believe he's had some just absolutely nuts wins, and just look out for him in the ranking because he might be higher than one would expect.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
it's actually it's good that you mentioned Pipsqueak because Pipsqueak falls into this category of there's a lot of young spacey players who
mm,
I think because they really haven't traveled to the U.S. I feel like I'm going to list a couple people, and some of them have traveled to the U.S., but not extensively. I just don't know if the larger melee scene really views them as good as they are. So I think Pipsqueak's a good example. This past weekend or 2 weekends ago, I believe it was, where he won the Vivaldi tournament. That's really
mm,
impressive to me. He won over another person who I think is really impressive, which is Prison, who you mentioned. And I'm going to throw a third one into that list. I think Nikki from Germany is really impressive to me as well. I think these are all players who, if you only paid attention to the big tournaments, or let's say you paid attention to Europe when we had DreamHack Winters being like a big tournament of the year, yeah, you probably wouldn't know these people, but
mm,
they're all young, they're all on the come up, and I think they're all really good.
definitely.
We'll talk about them more later when we talk about Fate because they're all contenders to do well at that tournament.
Exactly.
But yeah, let's talk about players who we would know from the top 100, we would know from doing well in the States. And maybe we'll talk about how the viewpoint of them in the States may kind of differ from how they will be ranked. I think probably like AMSA, maybe over Triforce, and maybe even Ice. I think those are all good examples of
Mm.
people who are all well known in the international Melee community. But yeah, as far as Europe, how do you think that those stack up against kind of the people who are coming up?
So what I would say is that there is still the upper echelon of European melee,
Yeah.
which has been inhabited by the same people for a long time. People like Ice and Triff and Over Triforce, etc. Um, and I mean, I think we're in quite kind of the same position that the top six of the global scene were just about maybe a year ago,
Yeah.
um, where all of the gods and Leffen were still, they were the top players. They would always have the top six spots, but we could feel that, for each passing year, the rest of all the people chasing them were just getting closer and closer, and I think we all could feel that. And just anytime someone like Plop or Axe would break into that upper echelon, and now that has happened in the global scene. And I think in the EU scene we are still where the top players are, the top players on the rankings, but give it 1 year or maybe less, and I think that our top ranks will be shuffled around in the same way that
Yeah.
the MPGR is. So I feel like a lot of these top players that you mentioned will probably be, kind of where one would expect them to be. I think in the I don't think anyone in the US crowd will be surprised looking at the top six.
Yeah.
But I think everyone just below them is getting close.
Yeah. I think Ice in particular is definitely someone who, despite the fact that we really haven't seen him at a U.S. event or a North American event in a little bit, he's got a pretty strong foothold. Whenever I watch him on
Mm.
whenever I watch him at any European tournament. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, who's to say in a few months? Yeah, like maybe those players yeah, maybe they don't place as well as some of these people on the come up. It'll be really cool to see. And I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is just seeing, like, letting people know that they're who to look out for. You know,
Mm.
last year we saw a bunch of people on the air rank who the people I mentioned were like in the 20s and 30s, and I think people then looking this year and seeing, wow, there, someone's in the top 10 that I've haven't heard of, or someone's in the top 15. Um,
Oh yeah.
I think that definitely gets eyes on people, and that's really what I want to see. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything in particular else you want to speak about the Phoenix Blue rankings. Of course, if there's anything that you want to mention, this would be the time to do it.
Well, I mean, just look out for all the look out for the rankings. We will be posting them on Twitter. Our Twitter is Phoenix Blue GG, and we will post every single day next week when the rankings are up. And I think, even if you're not too familiar with the scene, look out for the players who show up in the 50 to 41, or because I mean, last year we had Pipsqueak at, I think, like 48th
Yeah.
on the air rankings, and I can spoil that. No, he's not 48th this time around. Same goes for Sechi and Frenzy, who are like in the low 30s.
Yeah, man, I
Uh,
remember like Sechi, at that point, even when he was ranked, I remember that was kind of out of date.
mm.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
So
Sechi at 39, Frenzy at 35, Prison at 30. Yeah,
exactly. So I think, even though one can easily dismiss the lower ranked players as, just being fodder for the top 50, um, who knows, the person who's ranked 40th this year might be, top 20 next year.
yeah. I mean, looking at the resumes of those people, who's to say that in a year or so that I wouldn't be surprised to see them on the top 100 for the melee top one,
Oh yeah, I
the
mean,
MPGR. So yeah, if you are one of those people who you like to kind of follow these players and see them on the come up, I think you're right. If you look at anyone on this ranking who's a little lower, definitely chances for people to really jump pretty high.
mm.
Um, and a good place to show that to prove their stuff, to show their improvement, I think is Fate. What do you think about that?
I would definitely agree with that.
So Fate is going to be a little harder of a tournament to really do a deep dive, as opposed to something we're probably going to see coming up. We're going to do obviously Melee Stats is going to have a deep dive episode on SmashCon and Shine, and with their traditional pool structure, it's going to be a lot easier for us to go through that. Fate is really interesting because they kind of follow the system that was this was used for air tournaments, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's not the exact same format, but it definitely is in the same
yeah,
the
it's
same.
inspired by it. So how would you call it? Because I think people just looking at the image that they posted would probably say waterfall, but I don't know if it's necessarily waterfall.
Well, yeah, for sure. It's definitely not waterfall.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot simpler than one might think at first.
So there's round robin pools to begin, correct?
Mm.
And then depending on where you place in there, you get put into specific pools of players who have performed similarly. So from the 8-player round robin pools, the first and third place go into 6-player gold pools. Fourth and fifth go into 8-player round robin silver pools, and then sixth through eighth go into 10-player round robin bronze pools. And I think the big difference with this is that so waterfall is I don't want to call it a meme, but I definitely think because of how often it's talked about, definitely on the tips of tongues of people who may watch Melee, may be very into Melee, but may not know extensively about Melee formatting. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that people might call it that, but yeah, you're right. It's not really similar, because I believe if you get into like silver pools, there's no way to really get into the gold
Yeah,
bracket.
I think the thing is they could easily run the same format and just not do silver and bronze pools, and it would be the exact same thing for the top players. If you just want to know about like the actual top bracket, it's just like top three make it out, and instead of being put in, so it's round robin pools, top three make it out, instead of being put into a double elimination bracket, it's just another set of round robin pools, which then the first to third placers get put into a final double elimination bracket. And the silver and bronze is just for all the players who may not perform as well as the top players to get more matches out
Yeah.
of the tournament. And it's just a nice way of doing something for the O tours, in which isn't just running a ladder or
Yeah,
something along
I
those
think there's
lines.
a lot of people who are trying to figure out a way to integrate the what people might call pole fodder or whatever, to integrate
Mm.
them better into the scene, and this seems like a really cool way.
Yeah, I feel like, because that's something that I've had a lot of thoughts about. Should we run round robin pools or should we run double elimination pools for the Phoenix Blue tournaments? Because I'm one of those people who I despise round robin.
Yeah,
Just on the basis that it can just screw up the seating in
yeah, I think
all
Melee
kinds
Stats
of
is with you on that one. We're not
in
too big
all
round
kinds
robin
of
fans.
I mean, we've had some disgusting things happen in tournaments where good players have just been shafted by the round robin format and having to run into another top player just because that top player got upset.
Yeah, I mean, do
But
you? Sorry, I don't want. I want to, of course, get you back onto this, but I just want to mention. I think the funniest one that comes to mind. Do you remember? I believe it was Emerald City 6. I want to say,
Mhm.
uh, where NMW, like, I think he DQ'd out of his pools matches because he just got mad about the idea of it being round robin, and then got seeded to play like IBW or something like round one. And it might not have been IBDW, but he was seeded to play another top player who I think he ended up beating in like bracket,
Mm,
and then
yeah,
everyone was mad
exactly.
about that. Yeah,
We've had similar things happen at like every single event that I've run. There's more often than not been a top player who was first seed in his pool, got second or third, and then beat a first seed round one
yeah,
of bracket.
yeah. I think there's
Um,
just so many issues with that because you run into that, or you run into something with like Eden. I think it was Eden who did it way back when. Was
mm.
that they then reseeded like once
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
like it's just like you can't do that.
yeah. It's
So
so yeah.
yeah, you run
It's
into a
really
lot of issues
difficult.
with that. So
But I feel like with this format, it kind of you should just kind of not think about the seeding when you look at this kind of format. You shouldn't expect the expected to happen.
yeah, and for that
Um,
reason, I think it's going to be kind of tough to point out matchups that we're going to be
mm,
seeing. Instead, I think that the what we should be doing for Fate is kind of just picking up players who we um, we think might do well,
yeah.
or
So
yeah,
there's one final thing I want to touch on when it comes to the format,
yeah,
which Fate is doing differently than Air. So Air had top two make it out,
yeah,
both in the first round pools and the second round pools. And Fate are doing the top three for both first round and second round. And this is just infinitely better in my mind because at Air, there have been two instances of players who lost a single set and were eliminated from the tournament,
oh no,
which is just nuts. I think at Air 4, Unhaven lost a single set in his round two pool, and he got third in the pool and didn't make it to bracket, being, except for Leffen, the person with the least amount of lost sets at the tournament. And at Air 5, we had Humpe, who also lost one set in his round two pool. And then I think he lost to Ringler.
oh
And
wow,
he lost to Ringler in his round two pool and he beat Vidal. But but then Vidal beat Ringler. So all of them had lost a single set. And because of tiebreakers, Riddler and Vidal made it out, and Humpe got third and didn't make it out, even though he only lost one set.
oh
So
boy.
having the top three make it out does at least not screw you over if you only lose a single set.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like that seems like a good quality of life change.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I think that the pool setup is really cool, and I think it's. Thank you so much for the explanation. I feel like anytime we have a weird sort of major, like we have a major that's running a weirder, maybe less seen pool setup, I feel like an idiot because I always love to have these things explained to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's so good to hear that it's set up in such a way, and yeah, I think like it lets us see more melee of the top players, which is great, but also giving
Mm.
more melee to the lower level players. Yeah, that's incredible. I hope that we're going to see some TOs in the future who might try to bring this to American tournaments or try to bring this to tournaments, around the world. I think because it could be something that we might see more of. Um,
Yeah, it's so difficult, just trying to balance the, you want to have the best competitive format, but you
yeah,
also want to have a good tournament experience for the lower level players.
yeah,
I've been experimenting with, thinking, what if we do bracket pools, which then goes into gold pools, silver pools, and bronze pools, where the silver and bronze are round robin. But you know,
huh?
it's there's a lot of ways to go about that, and I
Definitely.
feel I I have we had some thinking to do for Phoenix Blue 3, what we want to do, but this is a lot of round robin, maybe a little too much for my taste, but I think it's definitely one worth trying out. And I mean, I can't really argue with the fact that this is one of the better experiences for lower level players. I mean, myself included, having the goal of making it into silver pools,
Yeah,
um, as a lower level player is, kind of cool, instead of, just, yeah, I'll play my pool and I'll see what I do.
yeah. I mean, like, I just really think it's cool that there are a lot of TOs out there who are trying to experiment with these types of things. I think obviously, I don't expect to see Genesis or the Big House or something
Yeah.
really experimenting a ton. But yeah, I mean, like the fact that a major as big as Fate is running something this interesting. Yeah, man, I love to see it, and from like a spectator point of view. Also, speaking of spectator point of view, do you want to talk about the players who we might be seeing later in bracket?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's interesting looking at the contenders for winning the tournament.
Yeah,
So, um, we've got some of the usual European suspects like Triff and Professor Pro, who are making it out, but we also have three American
yeah,
players
we
who
have
are
some
in that
interlopers.
expected top eight. Most notably Captain Face Roll, who as we know is 99% top 20, unless something incredibly crazy has happened.
Yeah, sorry, we
And
ranked
also
Armada and we kept face roll off.
exactly, and also Samu and Bobby Big Balls
Yeah,
are also making it there. So um, I mean, I think 100% Triff is the favorite to win the tournament. Um, the top seeds being Triff, Face Roll, Professor Pro.
yeah,
Um, because Triff has, just when looking at the other players, I don't think Face Roll and Triff have faced. I mean, at least in the past few months.
yeah. I don't really remember any sets from them. The biggest question I would have going into this is, I think this is the tournament that matters a lot if it's NTSC or PAL,
Oh yeah.
because that matchup specifically, the Pete Sheik matchup, yeah, that could really be the difference. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're running NTSC.
You are correct.
Okay, yeah. So I'd be interested to see how Triff fares in that. We
Mm,
really haven't seen him
yeah.
versus a ton of sheiks when he comes to America. I think he was supposed to play Dreffin at the Big House last year. Then Dreffin lost to Zuppy in pools in round one pools. So we didn't get to see that. I thought that would have been really interesting. And yeah, I was just kind of struggling to think of another like good Sheik
Yeah.
player who's he
Yeah.
played in America.
I don't. I can't get one of. I can't remember one off the top of my head. I don't know if he's played Swedish anytime.
Well, he's played
But
Swedish in Europe because I remember there's a heartbreaker where he gets basically like zeroed to death because he is on ledge on like FD or stadium, and then Swedish just kind of like bullies him out of the corner.
yeah,
Yeah,
but 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 I would say that Triffitt is the favorite. I think Face Roll has a good shot. But also Professor Pro is a player who is, I think he's a lot better than what one would think.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he used to be in that. I think I believe he used to be top 30 or at least in the top 40 of the SSBM rank a
Yeah,
few
I think
years
his I
back.
think his highest was like he was like 24th one year.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that when it comes to European tournaments, Professor Pro hasn't dropped off too much, really. He still is, one of the absolute top players and expected to win every single UK event at all times, even though Frenzy has been starting to take sets more and more sets off of him, as
Yeah.
well as Setchi. But I think Prof versus Face Roll will be quite an interesting matchup.
I think so as well. I think Face Roll's defining feature of him as a player is his ability to do so well versus Fox players. Um,
Mm. Oh
like
yeah, I would definitely. Didn't he have? Wait, no, wait. I remember looking at Facial's head-to-heads, and it wasn't actually the Fox. It was the Ice Climber matchup, which stood out to me, where
oh yeah.
he actually has like a crazy good record on Army.
Yeah, he does pretty well versus Army. He's beaten Bananas. But yeah, I remember last year when he was kind of on the come up was he had a stretch where all these Fox players he didn't lose against. So I believe KGH was one of
Mm.
them, but I remember the impressive one last year was Absent Page, where I
Oh
think his
yeah.
record on Absent Page is so great. And I know Absent Page currently not being entering tournaments. It's hard to really gauge how good of a win that was, but man, last year when Absent Page was around and earlier this year,
Oh,
he top 25 player. In this, if he kept going on,
100%.
top 20 player possibly, with how we've been seeing Melee stack up. But yeah, top 25 player, really good against Sheik, I think. And to see Captain Face Roll do so well against him, that really made me feel well
Yeah,
versus
I think.
Face Roll's Spacey's acumen.
Mm, I feel that Facial has a really good shot. But one thing to note is that although just looking at maybe the top 4 and 5 seeds, one would expect Triff to have quite a nice path to winners finals.
Yeah.
But I would say that is far and very far from the case, because him making it into top 8, there is a very interesting matchup which he might have to face. And looking at the 8th and 9th seed at the tournament, we find Nikki and Setchi.
Yeah.
So um, especially Setchi there is the one that I'm thinking of, because the last time Triff and Setchi faced were at a England national called Mercked,
Yeah.
and Setchi double eliminated Triff
Was
from
one
that
of them a
tournament.
3-0, or am I making that up?
Oh, I don't actually have
That's yeah. But
the exact results, but he double eliminated Triff, and I think Triff got maybe 7th, which is his worst performance at any EU tournament in the past year.
yeah.
Uh,
Was this
and
this
hmm?
was Sechi's Fox, correct?
No, that's not
That
correct.
that was his Falcon.
Setchi played Fox in pools.
Oh, okay. That's probably where I'm
Um,
getting the
and
misinformation from.
so this was the round robin wacky, where
Oh boy.
Setchi lost 2 matches in pools due to playing Fox and I think Martha Sheik as well. And then when he made it to bracket, he made it to Triff quite early and played his Falcon and just beat him.
Oh
And then they
boy.
faced off once more in the first round of Lucia's top 8, where Setchi won again. And I know Triff is afraid of Setchi. He tweeted it out just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And so and Setchi versus Nikki, I think, will be an interesting set. I believe Setchi won the last time the two faced at the Contract Invitational at Air 5. So I think that match can be a toss up, but
Yeah. I
if
think it'll be
Setchi if
interesting.
Setchi if Setchi wins, he will have Triff in his path, and I think that match will be one to watch. I mean, we saw NMW beat Triff at, was it Omega?
That was Omega 3. Yeah.
And I would say in my mind, Setchi and NMW are quite. I wouldn't be surprised if Sechi was better than NMW in my mind.
I think that
Uh,
the way that they play it, I could see if I were Triff, I could see Sechi being just as scary, if not scarier. Like the way
yeah,
that Sechi plays that, it definitely seems kind of nerve wracking.
definitely. So I think if you're Triff, that's the match to look out for. So that is personally the one thing that I'm most excited about this weekend, is seeing if Sechi can do the nuts run. The problem for Sechi is that if he makes it to winter semis over Triff, he
Yeah,
will most likely have either Frenzy or Bobby Big Balls in his path. And him and Frenzy, I think they're like almost exactly 50-50
yeah,
in their all-time sets.
interesting. Yeah, it'd be that'd be a cool one to see because I feel like Triff, the Americans would probably know him for doing pretty well against Spaceys. Um,
Mm,
to be honest, when I was at Genesis, I was talking to Ambi Sinister about how impressive it was that Triff was able to 3-0 Fat Goku.
yeah.
So we were talking about how that was more impressive than him beating Mewtwo King. We were joking about that. But yeah, so I think Triff is definitely notable for like kind of doing pretty well versus Spacey. So yeah, you're right. That I think that will be interesting to see. Bobby Big Balls versus Frenzy. I think that can go either way. Bobby lost his last like high profile Falco Ditto at Low Tier City against Albert, who then
Mm.
went on to beat H Box. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think Falco Dittos are kind of volatile in that sense where what necessarily might happen one time, it might not affect the outcome of the next 10 sets or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Oh
And
man, just sorry to interrupt you, but like
yeah,
just looking at the projected, like, well, at least the seeding, I see some even more exciting matchups. We see Professor Pro versus Samu.
that's gonna
The
be
with
crazy. Let's see. I really am a big Zamu fan.
mm,
Diehard fans will know from way back when I was talking about how Zamu is great after he beat like Shinobi. I was like he's gonna be great. So way back when. But yeah, let's see. I think he definitely is someone who like could lose to a European before that.
oh, I
Definitely.
mean, I wouldn't I know like a lot of the Europeans who are in the top 20 seeds, they can make stuff happen, definitely.
So I believe he would, if everything goes according to seed, which we do these episodes on stuff like this, and
Mhm.
like we did a Smash Plus episode. We talked about if everything goes according to seed. What happens? Nothing goes according to seed. But if it were, I believe
Exactly.
Zamu would play Timmy, right?
Yes.
That would be an interesting one. I was kind of a Timmy believer last year. I
Mhm.
got made fun of because I said that he should be. I was part of the force that helped put him on the ballot last year, and then got made fun of for saying like, "Why did you think he was as good as all these players?"
I think
But
Timmy should be. If you're interested in the Phoenix Blue rankings, look out for Timmy.
I do
He's
think
up there.
Timmy's really solid. Timmy
Oh
had
yeah.
he lost to did he lose to Mo earlier this year? I know, face
No.
Professor Pro
Wait,
did. I think Timmy had a weird loss earlier this year, but like
Timmy. I mean, at Vianality, Timmy lost to Clemens, who's local. Well, he barely travels like ever,
yeah,
and I can't really recall Timmy. Um, if
I
Timmy had any super weird losses. But one thing I'd like to point out when it comes to Timmy versus Samu is that Timmy has a winning record on Nikki in the
yeah.
past year. I believe he's 3-1 against Nikki. So I think Timmy is very very well versed in the Fox matchup specifically, and
Yeah, I mean
um,
he beat Pipsqueak recently as well, right?
oh yeah,
That was
yeah.
Pipsqueak got into losers at Vianality. Yeah, like he definitely a player who I think is kind of scary for someone
Mm.
like Zamu.
And another match that I personally really look forward to is the projected match between Captain Faceroll and Prisant.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
oh boy,
That's so cool. Yeah, because we really haven't seen a ton of Prisant versus NTSC Sheik.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
I guess that's not entirely true, because I know he played versus Nut at Emerald City.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think Prisant's so good, man.
Prison is absolutely nuts, and I think he will just continue climbing. He um it wasn't NTSC Sheik, but I believe he 3-0'd over Triforce, or at least 3-1 at Air 5, which was one of his really breakout performances, getting ninth at that tournament.
Yeah,
And I feel like Prison is he can really be devastating.
yeah. Definitely one of those players who I think, given any time on the larger national scale, because even within Europe, um, him traveling within Europe is a relatively new thing, correct?
Sorry, once more.
Him traveling in Europe is relatively new, right? He would go to like maybe one tournament outside of Norway for a little bit, and now he's kind of
Yeah,
traveling a little more.
he's been traveling quite a lot more, I
Yeah,
believe. So before he really only went to Valhalla 1. He went to a Dream Hack, but in the past year he went to Air. He went to Valhalla 2, went to Phoenix Blue 2, and at all of those tournaments, I mean, ninth at Air, third at Valhalla, fourth at Phoenix Blue, and not having any super weird losses either, just and consistently picking up these really good wins.
yeah. I mean, he's a super solid player. I think that's a good call. That would be an interesting matchup. I have another interesting one, which this might be showing maybe my outdated sense of European knowledge, but
Hmm?
I see Mint is down at the 13th seed.
Hmm?
And who is it? Bobby? Is it Bobby Big Balls as the fourth seed? Is that who we play? It's kind of interesting to
Ooh,
me because I, for a long time, was a big believer in Mint as another player who didn't really get to travel a ton, as far as I know. But
definitely. Yeah, I mean, so Mint is I'm definitely with you on the Mint believer train, because Mint is he is good. He is really, really good. And I I would say in the Phoenix Blue rankings, his he it won't really show. It won't really do him justice because he has not been traveling a lot.
yeah,
I mean, he went to Ayr, he went to Schism, which is in Ireland,
mhm.
and but outside of that, he hasn't been able to travel a lot. But I know that he is looking to travel a lot more going forward,
Oh,
and
that's incredible to hear.
he has been grinding for Fate. If you follow his stream, I don't know, it's on top of my head, on the top of my head. Wait, I can actually check here. His stream is Mint Montgomery, and he has been grinding every single day for, I mean, I don't know, the past few weeks, just grinding for Fate. And I know that he is extremely hungry for some good wins. So, and honestly, Mint versus Bobby Big Balls, I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah,
if Mint can make stuff happen,
we'll see.
because he is his seed is, I mean, it's fair, considering that he hasn't been attending much, but
Mhm.
he's easily one of the, in my mind, probably one of the 10 best players at the tournament.
Oh
So,
yeah, if you see him in top eight, I don't think anyone should be
oh
surprised.
no,
I think
definitely
actually,
not.
like, there are so many players you can go down pretty far and say, like, I'd say the same thing about Pipsqueak. You know, if I see
Mm,
Pipsqueak in top eight, I don't think anyone should be surprised. Yeah, I think that the level of skill in these players is really interesting because they're all kind of bunched around the same like skill range. You know, if you look at
mm,
like Nikki and Priscilla at 7 and 8, I I think that those players are really good. You know, I talked about them earlier, but also you look at Mint and Pipsqueak at 13 and 14. There's not a in my
mm.
mind, there's not like a huge difference. I think that like any of those players in that range can do well, and that's one thing I think is really cool about this tournament.
100%. And one interesting thing to point out is you might notice that Nebi doesn't really have that good of a seed,
Yeah, I
with
mean
him
people
at
would know him
17.
as the top 100 player. You know, he got top 100 last
Definitely
year, but
the second best Yoshi in the world. Uh, I mean, if you were watching Phoenix Blue, you would have seen him win doubles with Amsa,
yeah,
with a double Yoshi.
Yeah, and one thing about that doubles win is might be a little different than what we would see him as now, right? Because in his hand
Oh
would
yeah,
be something a little different than what we might see.
exactly. That was why. That's exactly why I was bringing it up. So Nebby, used to play with a GameCube controller. That's no longer the fact. He is now a proud box owner, as you would know if you follow him on Twitter,
I feel
which I
like
believe is
half of his tweets are
Nebby
about the box.
underscore. Oh yeah. So he, I mean, I actually helped out with some of the Fate seeding. Um, but and I was so torn on where to put Nebby. I feel like where they ended up putting him was really really fair.
Yeah,
Uh, because I mean, considering his results, he's really really good. But the box is, he has to basically relearn the game. But he has been, doing better and better and better at the local tournaments in the Netherlands, and he might not have a crazy performance this time around. I wouldn't be surprised if he got upset in round two pools or got a bad placing. But I feel like Nebby he's coming back. He will be give him a few more months and he will be just a just a nightmare to face with the box. I've
yeah.
heard people say that he's already a nightmare, but
Now,
only
I
time will
think
tell. But
the
I think it will be
question,
interesting to watch out for him.
yeah, for sure. The question I have about him is he's still going Yoshi, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
he is.
because I know that there are several different players who switch their mains when going to some sort of box. So I think the one that comes to mind first is Gravy. He was
Yep.
a huge proponent of the Smash box, I think it was called.
Yes.
So he went from a Falcon main to a Fox main on the Smash box, and also I think there's a lot of different cases of people who probably have not really burst onto the scene and been as notable, but you have people like Squibble went from being Puff main in New England, and then he's a Fox main on the box. Actually, his case is really funny because he doesn't. I believe his own box is proprietary, and is more broken than the actual box is, like as far as what he can do. So maybe that's why we
Mm.
haven't seen him on a national level, is because his what he uses might be banned. But yeah, so I definitely know there's players who they end up switching to a character who they think might work better on box. But it's cool to see that he's staying Yoshi, and I think Yoshi on a box doesn't sound like it is. It actually sounds pretty good, considering all the inputs that would need to be done with the double jump cancels.
And
So
also Nebby is a huge like a rhythm game fan, and
yeah,
like spending a lot of times in the arcades playing different kinds of. So I mean, switching to this kind of setup, where he just gets to press a lot of buttons, can be quite scary.
yeah. Well, you know what? I do like Nebby, and I'm a big Yoshi fan. As anyone who I think it was only the gang that I done it at, but I'm down to Yoshi Ditto. Anyone I see, I think that Yoshi's such a dumb character. I don't get to play him a ton, but I think he's such a dumb character. He's so fun. Yeah. So like obviously I'm a Nebby fan, and being able to see him kind of come back to the level that he was at before, or exceed any expectations of that, like being able to do better than he did before, I'd be so up for seeing that. So yeah,
No,
seeing
me,
him
me
do
too.
well, that'd be a treat. But as you're correct, as of right now, it's kind of a transition period, so it shouldn't be crazy that he could lose to someone seated below him. But
Mm.
yeah, so interested to see how that goes. I think we mentioned a lot of these players. Is there anyone else you want to mention?
I mean, you know, we've been able to touch upon most of them. Just, I mean, I'd like to give quick shout outs to Jaryden, who's if you followed the NorCal
The NorCal, yeah.
when he was living there not too long ago, he was doing quite well, get on the power ranking, and he in the past year he has a win on Professor Pro. He did well at HF LAN, and I think he's always one to look out for. Um, Also, Popmeister 6000 is probably one of the players that US audience have no idea who he is.
Yeah,
Um, he's a Jigglypuff from Sweden. He's actually from my region, which is the south, and he has been on the rise like a madman. So um, just over a year ago, he wasn't even ranked in the Swedish power rankings. I believe he just fell short. But on the ranking, which were made right after Air, he jumped into the top 10 since he had wins on Dady and Zoller and a lot of other great Swedish players. And he just continued rising. He just wouldn't stop. He beat Blaze, which is the German Peach main at Air, and then at Red Bull E Weekend in Sweden, he beat Nebby twice.
Yeah, wow.
Which at the time where Nebby was a top 10 European player with on the GameCube controller. He he just outperformed himself at every single event he went to. And a great set to watch is his set versus Amsa at Phoenix Blue 2, where he took a game, and then in game four was extremely close, and Amsa just barely clutched it out to win 3-1, and Amsa jumped out of his chair and popped off after beating Popmeister, which in my mind speaks a lot to how good he actually is.
You know when a top player pops off after beating someone who's unranked or someone who's so thought of as below them. Yeah, you know what that means.
Oh yeah, so Popmeister, one to look out for.
I'm just glad that as he's getting good, he changed to Popmeister because his tag wasn't always Popmeister.
Yeah, let's say that those that know, they know.
Yeah, not about to let's get into that on here. But yeah, I think he's a good player to pick out because he is someone who's you're right. He's really on the come up. Like we talked about these players who I think are improving rapidly. You know, we talked about Prison, we talked about Nikki. I mentioned we mentioned Sechi, and I mentioned Pipsqueak. But yeah, I think you're right because out of all those players, the one who is most recent to have this kind of burst is Popmeister. I feel like all those players have been doing well for a little bit, but yeah, I think that's a good pick. All right. Well, it's hard to say for this one because the exact bracket is probably not going to end up like we say it will.
Yeah.
But usually for these types of things, we like to make a prediction as to who's going to win the whole thing. So do you want to go first? Do you want to make a prediction?
I think for me, it all comes down to what Sechi can do.
Yeah.
Versus Triff. I'll say that my official prediction will be Triff to win the entire event, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Face Roll, Professor Pro, or maybe even Percent.
Yeah.
Winning.
That'd be crazy.
Because I mean Percent beating Face Roll and then maybe Sechi, if he's able to get that far, wouldn't be too out of the ordinary. But we'll see. My pick is Triff at least.
Yeah. Now, ever since I correctly predicted Axe to win Smash Summit, which I brought up so many times, I've always tried to outdo myself and pick like crazy people. But I think I'm gonna have to be a little more conservative on this one. And really what it comes down to is, I think both of the top two seeds, by far and away the favorites, both I think can lose to people before top 8 even. You're right about Sechi and Captain Face Roll. You're right about Prissant. And I think even in top 8, someone like Professor Pro is scary to these players. What I'm going to say is I'm probably going to have to pick Face Roll. I'm a huge Triff fan as a Peach player. Like I was before he could even like come to America. I think I was like watching him and stuff. So I've been a huge fan of him, and I think I heard from the grapevine that he at least acknowledges Melee Stats' existence. I don't want to put words in his mouth and say he's a fan, but I know that he knows of us.
I mean, he's a Phoenix Blue fan, so I love him.
He's a Phoenix Blue fan. Okay. Well, you know what? Phoenix Blue fan, Triff. I'll pick Captain Faithful because I know he's a Melee Stats fan. He's been on the show before. He is in our Discord. So
nice.
I'm gonna give the shield answer. I'm gonna say Captain Faithful. But yeah, in reality, I think that Faithful is such a strong player. I think Triff is such a strong player. It's a toss up to me. If I were to give a reason as to why I'd pick Faithful, I think you're right on the money about Triff having a scary bracket against Sechi, if that's a match that we see. And face roll, I think, is really strong versus Fox. And I also think that him playing in NTSC for his entire career is really helpful in this situation.
Mm.
So I'm going to say face
Yeah,
roll.
that's a very good call.
But you're right, Triff. I mean, it could go either way. And who knows? If it's someone else other than those two, I think that's awesome. I think that's such an amazing thing to see. But yeah, I think with those predictions, I think this is going to wrap up the show. You know, I know that we talked about the Phoenix Blue rankings, so we can just reiterate that. So that'll be coming out next week, and follow Phoenix Blue on Twitter. What's the exact at for Twitter for the Phoenix Blue Twitter?
Phoenix Blue GG.
And you can follow you at TEROZHS. Correct? Is that
Exactly.
it?
Exactly. Teros HS, with HS standing for Hearthstone, which used to be my game of choice a few years back.
uh, hey, it's a breath of fresh air to see someone who doesn't have SSBM at the end of their tag, right? So you can follow you on there. Obviously, look forward to Phoenix Blue 3 next year. That should be something to look forward
Dude,
to.
Phoenix Blue 3. Look forward to it. It will be good.
Awesome. And yeah, so I know that when we have Edwin Buddy on the podcast, we end up taking about 20 minutes to shill for Melee Stats. So luckily, to fans who have made it this far, yeah, Edwin's not on. You're going to hear me shill, which should be a little less. But obviously, we talked about the Patreon earlier. Melee Stats, or patreon.com/Melee Stats. We actually reached a goal that we had where if we were to make $100 a month, we would be doing a celebration stream. So we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to just get the logistics down for a celebration stream, and I can't thank everyone enough for donating. Being able to be compensated for the time that we put into the work just makes us want to do this so much more. You know, deep dives, when's melee. There's a couple other things down the pipeline that we are trying to think about, and just knowing that there are people who support us and also are able to monetarily support us makes us want to do so much more. Um, Before I get off of this, I just want to say by the time this episode airs, we will actually probably have new Patreon goals. We'll have new stretch goals within the for the $120, $150, $200, and I think all of them are really cool. And I just really want to be able to help produce more content for Melee Stats, and Patreon helps so much with that. As far as joining us just to talk to us, you know, I talked about the Discord. The Discord server is an open server where we have the members of Melee Stats, we have top players, we have nerds throughout the entire community who, you know, like I feel like every scene we have one nerd who's in there. So that's incredible. You know, we talk about locals all the time, and you know, you can join us in there and talk with us. And yeah, I believe that's going to be it for it today. You know what? I actually want to speak about the fans because I got a lovely DM from a fan yesterday who gave us a little bit of a sting to put at the end of the episode. You know, in the past few episodes, we had the sound of someone surfacing from the deep dive onto the surfacing from the water. uh, and we were just doing it like live. We were doing our impressions of it, and I have a lovely fan who DM'd me, and they made a little sting for the episode. So before I play that, I just want to thank you so much for being on. Great to hear.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah,
It's been great.
I mean, like such a fountain of knowledge. Great to hear all that, and really looking forward to the Phoenix Blue rankings.
Thank you.
So, thanks so much for being on. And yeah, this has been Melee Stats Deep Dives. Now I'm gonna play this thing. Hopefully it works out well. Okay, just gotta open it up, and now